For all you elk hunters out there, chasing turkeys is basically the same thing. I know the reaction you just gave me, but don't knock it till you try it, and don't try it without OnX. The Hunt app will not only help you find new areas on public ground, but I use it to find out landowner info to get permission on private ground that I see birds on as well. OnX Hunt has a special offer for you. Use code CAL to receive 20% off your membership at onxmaps.com/hunt and find more birds this spring.
There's nothing like snook hook sets at dawn or catching a tarpon in the moonlight. Find your next fishing trip made easy on fishingbooker.com and experience the magic of the Sunshine State or any other destination on your fishing bucket list. Book a blue water adventure in search of sailfish or go snapper fishing with the kids. With over 6,000 captains and trips to choose from, planning your next one just got a whole lot easier. Download the Fishing Booker app on the Google Play or App Store, or visit them online at fishingbooker.com to book your trip today. I'm sure a lot of you guys remember the old ceremonial hunting tradition of eating the heart out of the first animal you kill. Meat from those organs are among the most nutrient-rich foods on the planet. You can get those same benefits your ancestors craved via convenient daily capsules from Heart and Soil. Find out more at heartandsoil.co. And remember, use code MeatEater for 10% off your purchase.
From MeatEater's World News Headquarters in Bozeman, Montana, this is Cal's Week in Review with Ryan Cal Callahan. Now, here's Cal.
A New York man got busted last week after officials found an 11-foot alligator living inside his house. Conservation officers learned that the man had been keeping the 750-pound animal in an in-ground swimming pool, and that pool wasn't in the backyard. No, that would make too much sense. Instead, he'd put the swimming pool inside an addition he'd built onto his house. Officials also learned that he'd been allowing members of the public to swim with the alligator inside the pool inside his home. The New York Department of Environmental Conservation hasn't said whether he was charging admissions for the privilege, but I'd be shocked if he wasn't. A 750-pound gator's got to eat something. It's unclear whether anyone was injured while swimming with the alligator, but there's reason to believe most folks survived unscathed. This gator was reportedly 30 years old, was blind in both eyes, and had what the New York DEC describes as spinal complications. The owner of this New York gator had formerly possessed a license for the animal, but it expired in 2021 and was never renewed. Authorities turned the alligator over to a licensed caretaker who will house and care for the giant reptile until it can be properly transported for permanent care. Future charges are pending, and we don't know what will stick, other than being the most Florida man in New York. This week, we've got the waterfowl desk, Colorado commissioners, and so much more. But first, I'm going to tell you about my week, and my week has been flying. First thing you need to know is we are launching the Auction House of Oddities, and there is a bunch of awesome stuff in here as usual. And as per usual, the purchase of these things will go toward providing more access to hunting and fishing. This go-round, we are raising money for the biggest nut of all, accessing corner-locked lands. That's right, it's the Corner Crossing Legal Defense Fund. As crazy as it sounds, we have to put up the cash to preserve the right to step from one piece of a public land to the next piece of public land. And that's okay, because once we win this round, we'll be that much closer to winning this fight for good. Millions of acres. Millions! Say it with me. Millions of acres of public land are constrained in odd ambiguity. My home state of Montana, being one of the states we have got to get back into line. And in order to do this, we are going to sell you. We're going to make you, ask you, plead with you to donate cash for these one-of-a-kind, super unique items. Items like a Wyoming Cowboy Edition Weatherby Mark V in God's caliber, the 300 Win Mag. Less than 250 of these exist. It's a tack driver and a collectible. Llama-assisted pack trip in the Snowy Range, where you get an angle for high country trout with bighorn pack llamas. This trip includes your very own Wyoming-based gourmet backcountry chefs, and old Giannis Patelis or myself may even go with you. Old Steve Ranella sourced beaver pelts to make pillows for you. Those will be in there. There's a fur-lined FHF chest rig, which everybody needs. There's even going to be a West Texas Aoudad hunt, plus so much more. Second thing you need to know. While this launches, I'll be angling on a skiff in Florida with Ed Anderson. Captain Lacey Kelly and Reeves Carlisle will be hosting an amazing week for the lucky winners of the BHA Rendezvous fly fishing trip. Rendezvous is still coming up in Minneapolis. Get your tickets now. I'll see you there. So will Randall Williams. He'll be hosting a special round of Meat Eater Trivia Friday night of Rendezvous. So you Minneapolis folks and beyond, put your thinking caps on and get down there. Buy some tickets right now. Also, you do know that the spring live tour is coming up, right? Like the live Meat Eater podcast tour. We're going all over. Just hack that into the old Google machine. We're hitting California, Arizona, Washington, all sorts of wild locales in between, including Missoula, Montana. On top of that, we all got to get out and spank some turkeys, find some spring bears, pick ticks, find mushrooms, get in shape, get that bow flinging arrows, muck out the garage. Moving on to the waterfowl desk. Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks is considering a proposal that will allow waterfowl hunting on an 87-mile stretch of the Yellowstone River that's been closed to hunting since 1958. It was closed during a time when Canada goose numbers were historically low, and this area was designated as a safe haven for the highline population in northeast Montana. Now, those numbers have rebounded, which is a gross understatement. And it's a gross understatement because there's like a gajillion dark geese on this stretch of river. It's darn near disgusting. Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks says there's no scientific reason to keep the sanctuary closed. Anyone who's visited this area knows what they're talking about. So opening up this closed stretch of river would be a very good thing. And just so you know, this is one of those rare instances when some hunters are actually opposing opening up new hunting opportunities. The Montana chapter of Ducks Unlimited has come out against the proposal. I'm sure we'll be talking with them here pretty quick. They worry that opening the sanctuary to hunting will disrupt the migration pattern and make it harder to hunt birds off the sanctuary too. If bird numbers take a hit or their patterns make them more difficult to hunt, it could also impact the local economy. Now, several of you wrote in to oppose this measure. I understand where you're coming from, but gang, I don't agree with you. Would you like to know why? I'm sure you would. So, you know how hunters are always scared that if we put a closure on, in this instance, a stretch of river or a mountain or a region or something like that, we'll never get it back. The biologists say we need to close it, but we don't want to because we'll never get the opportunity to hunt back. Well, guess what? We're getting the opportunity to hunt back. The biologists say the science is sound. We are not going to hurt our hunting opportunities on this stretch of river or in the fields beyond it. It's just going to add more access to hunting. Yeah, thumbs up from me. The other thing I got to tell you here, gang, the history is very recent. So the opponents of this thing, all I have to say to you is we closed this in 1958, okay? The population rebounded faster than anybody thought. We went from counting thousands of geese to counting hundreds of thousands of geese in very short order. If for any reason, okay, any reason that populations or the economies or the opportunities take a huge hit in this area, because this is regulation, not legislation, we will be able to shut this back down. Lickety-split. There's not a biologist that likes to hunt ducks and geese that wants to kill them all. Okay, I promise you. Access is a good thing. We know Montana's a target for a lot of folks during the hunting season. Let's spread them out. That's my 2 cents. I would love for you to write in to ASKCAL. That's askcal at themeateater.com. And let me know what the biologists don't. Anyway, there is limited time to comment on this. Whether you are a proponent or an opponent of this, you better stand up and represent yourself. And by stand up, I mean you can, do the online thing or actually go to this meeting. The Fish and Wildlife Commission meeting will be April 17th, 2024. Public comments will be accepted on a list of proposals, including the forestry annual sustainable yield calculation, the migratory bird regulations, which is what this is going to be housed underneath, a bunch of other things. This particular meeting is going to be virtually on Zoom only. You'll have to go to fwp.mt.gov to bird dog that one down. Comments on all of the proposals that are going to be in there need to be in by March 28th. So if you're listening to this the day it drops, which is Sunday, that's the 24th of March. March 28th is when you need to get your comments in by. Again, I think it's a good thing. Moving on to the Colorado desk. Colorado hunters got more bad news last week as the state Senate voted to confirm two bona fide animal welfare advocates to the Colorado Parks and Wildlife Commission. Governor Jared Polis had announced their appointments last year, and they'd been serving on the commission since then, but the state Senate still needed to confirm those appointments, and they did that last week. We'll start with the slightly less controversial appointment. The Senate voted 23-11 to confirm Jack Murphy to a position representing outdoor recreation and parks. Murphy co-founded Urban Wildlife Rescue, which provides humane solutions to wildlife conflicts, wildlife education, and wildlife rehabilitation. He has also served on the Colorado Non-Game Conservation and Wildlife Restoration Board and the Board of Colorado Animal Protectors. How this makes him qualified to represent the interests of outdoor recreation and parks is beyond me, but his appointment received far less pushback from Colorado legislators. All Republicans still voted against his appointment, but he was the only one to be recommended by the Senate Agriculture Committee earlier this month. This far more controversial pick was a lady named Jess Ballou. Ballou was also nominated to serve as a representative for outdoor recreation and parks, but she admitted in a committee hearing that she has never owned a state parks pass and has only visited a few parks in the Denver metro area. Along with being grossly underqualified for the position, she's also an outspoken animal rights advocate. She manages the Animal Law program at the University of Denver and was a fellow at the Center for Biological Diversity. Here she is speaking on a podcast appearance just last year.
We have to be able to focus on the experiences of individual animals and their narratives and the cruelty and exploitation they experience every second of every day, because we do tend to focus on general populations or, the health of a group versus what's going on in this individual animal's life. And I feel like that is a powerful story that we need to get out there.
For those who may not be familiar with the mandate of the Colorado Parks and Wildlife Department, there's nothing in there about protecting individual animals. In fact, one of their top 10 goals is to increase big game populations as they grow the number of hunters and anglers. I can't imagine Ballou will be comfortable with that mandate. As you can imagine, Ballou's appointment was opposed by a host of individuals and organizations from across the political spectrum. A coalition of outdoor groups that included the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, Backcountry Hunters and Anglers, and the National Wild Turkey Federation wrote a letter pointing out her lack of qualifications. Both Democrat and Republican senators also opposed her nomination, and one of the most outspoken was Democratic Senator Dylan Roberts. Unfortunately, in the end, Roberts was only able to convince 4 of his fellow Democrats to join him, and Ballou's appointment passed 14-19. It wasn't all bad news in the Colorado Senate last week. Governor Polis made a third appointment last year, a fellow by the name of Gary Skiba. Skiba was nominated to serve as a representative of sportspersons, but hunters and anglers didn't buy it. Skiba was a staunch advocate of the recent wolf reintroduction, and he's currently the wildlife program manager for the San Juan Citizens Alliance, a Durango-based environmental advocacy organization. After the Senate Agriculture Committee voted to oppose his nomination, he voluntarily withdrew his name from consideration. Many believe he did so because he knew he wouldn't be able to pass a vote in the Senate, and he wanted to save Governor Polis the embarrassment of failing to have an appointment approved. So, that sportsperson seat on the Parks and Wildlife Commission is still vacant. If you live in Colorado, be looking for Governor Polis to announce a new nominee in the coming weeks. For all you elk hunters out there, chasing turkeys is basically the same thing. I know the reaction you just gave me, but don't knock it till you try it, and don't try it without OnX. The Hunt app will not only help you find new areas on public ground, but I use it to find out landowner info to get permission on private ground that I see birds on as well. OnX Hunt has a special offer for you. Use code CAL to receive 20% off your membership at onxmaps.com/hunt and find more birds this spring.
Now, a lot of you guys are familiar with the old hunting tradition of eating, some organ, the heart or a chunk of liver off the first animal you kill. I had that when I was a little kid, and it was a big deal. Organ meats were always prized by frontier people who knew the importance of getting a lot of different minerals and nutrients. And as often is the case, those guys were onto something, because organs are among the most nutrient-rich foods on the planet. And you can get the same benefits your ancestors craved via convenient daily capsules from Heart and Soil, made exclusively from regeneratively raised, grass-fed, and finished cattle. Heart and Soil's unique freeze-drying process means all those important nutrients are trapped in, ensuring you experience every one of the benefits of nature's superfood in a clean, convenient, taste-free capsule. Find out more at heartandsoil.co. And make sure to use code MeatEater for 10% off your purchase. That's heartandsoil.co. Use the code MeatEater. There's nothing like snook hook sets at dawn or catching a tarpon in the moonlight. Find your next fishing trip made easy on fishingbooker.com and experience the magic of the Sunshine State or any other destination on your fishing bucket list. Book a blue water adventure in search of sailfish or go snapper fishing with the kids. With over 6,000 captains and trips to choose from, planning your next one just got a whole lot easier. Download the Fishing Booker app on the Google Play or App Store, or visit them online at fishingbooker.com to book your trip today.
Moving on to the legislative desk.
I know I got a bad
Legislation!
and it isn't just talk.
The Texas Parks and Wildlife Commission has scheduled their next workday and commission meeting for March 27th and 28th. They'll be discussing new migratory bird hunting rules, including changes to the light goose conservation order, as well as new hunting regulations. Some of these may include changes to turkey hunting, more doe days in parts of Texas, and more youth hunting days. They also may consider a speckled trout tag system for oversized fish per year. And as always, they'll be covering real estate transactions like the one we covered a few weeks ago with SpaceX. One of those would give the state permanent access to the Goat Island unit of the Caddo Lake WMA, which would result in additional hunter access. For more info and to find out how to get involved, get in touch with the Texas chapter of Backcountry Hunters and Anglers. They're on top of everything happening in the Lone Star State, and they'll be able to keep you in the loop, but don't wait too long. The commission is only accepting online comments on these proposals until 5 p.m. on March 27th, which is only a few days after this episode airs. For info or to comment, go to tpwd.texas.gov. In Wisconsin, Governor Tony Evers just signed a bill legalizing air guns to be used during any firearm hunting season. The bill defines an air gun as a weapon originally manufactured to expel one or more metal projectiles by the expansion of compressed air. Air guns have come a long way in the last few decades, and there are quite a few models out there capable of taking down deer-sized animals. If you live in Wisconsin and air gun hunting floats your boat, send Governor Evers a note of appreciation. Listener Keegan Bai sent me an email about a bill in Colorado that would force livestock owners to use, quote, non-lethal coexistence strategies if they want to be compensated for livestock depredation. Current law authorizes a livestock owner to be compensated when a wolf kills livestock, a livestock guard, or a herding animal. This new bill, HB 24-1375, would make livestock owners ineligible for that compensation unless they have employed these non-lethal coexistence strategies and have disposed of the carcass to make it inedible for native carnivores. If an owner fails to appropriately dispose of a livestock carcass in violation of the bill and this failure results in depredation, the Division of Parks and Wildlife may not issue a permit to kill the native carnivore. In addition, the bill revokes compensation for herding dogs and non-dog livestock guardians, such as donkeys and those real ticked-off llamas. Under this bill, a livestock owner can only claim compensation if a livestock guardian dog is killed while working and it has been trained to do what dogs do. You know that phrase, adding insult to injury? I'm sure this bill feels like that to Colorado ranchers. Other states have similar requirements for livestock owners. If they want to be compensated for wolf depredation, they must at least try to use deterrent methods to protect their herd. But this bill imposes those new requirements just a few months after the state released a pack of wolves against the wishes of virtually every Colorado rancher. At the same time, it limits the type of guardian animals ranches can employ to keep their livestock safe. As Keegan put it in his email to me, this is why folks get so hesitant when it comes to sweeping bills on biology, guns, and so on. They just never leave well enough alone. They always have to keep pushing the boundaries of common sense and decency. And, speaking of common sense, this is going like the opinion side of things, or just an observation, really. Coexistence. If you think about it, real weird. Coexistence in the animal world means sometimes you get killed and sometimes you kill the thing that you're trying to eat. But then when we put it in the lens of humans, it somehow means that we have to do our level best to prevent the thing that's trying to kill us or animals from doing what it wants to do. And I just kind of find that weird without killing it, right? Like double standard, I suppose. Anyway, sticking with wolves, but moving to Minnesota, the legislature is considering a bipartisan proposal to mandate a wolf hunt once the species is removed from the endangered species list. The bill HF 3903 does not mandate bag limits or means of take, but it does require the Department of Natural Resources to call an annual open season for wolves every year the species is not listed as federally endangered. A spokesperson for the Minnesota Deer Hunters Association admitted to local media that wolves aren't the only predators that impact deer numbers, but they're the only predator shielded from hunting. Considering the fact that the wolf population estimate has far exceeded both state and federal recovery goals in Minnesota, he argued that it's time to start managing them like any other species. The Arizona Fish and Game Commission voted last week to no longer put big game tags up for auction. Historically, the Arizona Game and Fish Department has allowed up to 3 auction tags for each of its big game species. No one denies that these tags bring in millions of dollars every year, and all that money is sent back to the state for conservation work. Last year, for example, the Arizona statewide mule deer tag brought in a whopping $725,000. This year, the state's bighorn sheep tag brought in $430,000. Those are big numbers. But Arizona commissioners worried that auctions make it impossible for less wealthy people to participate. I mean, really? Now, granted, $725K can't get you a house here in Gallatin County, which is insane, but $430,000 isn't in the realm of possibility for all but the wealthiest of individuals, or people who, maybe like me, are going to be like, you know what, I'm just going to sell everything, go out swinging, have a great time doing it, and wander off into the desert afterwards. Folks who think like that. It's just, thank you for coming around to this, Arizona. 4 out of the 5 commissioners who voted to end the auctions argued that this system goes against the North American model of wildlife conservation, which I totally agree with, which says that wildlife is a public trust rather than the domain of the wealthy. They believe a raffle system can give any hunter a shot at a coveted tag and still raise millions for conservation. Which reminds me, you still have about a month left to put your name in the hat for the statewide Montana mule deer tag. The deadline to enter is April 30th, and each entry is only $20. Just for an example, I went to buy my entries into the Montana statewide mule deer tag, and then I looked at my bank account and my credit card statement, and I am going to have to make that purchase next month. Okay? I want my names in the hat. But, I got to budget that too, and that's only $20 a whack. Got it? If you want to put your name in there, Google Montana Mule Deer Tag BHA or visit themeateater.com and look up my article that you can find there. Let's show our state agencies that we can still raise millions of dollars for conservation using a more equitable system that gives any hunter at least a shot, no matter the size of the wallet. If you're trying to read between the lines here, let me just lay it out there for you. I think these auction tags are just horrible. They're horrible for wildlife. Like, it commoditizes to the extreme our wildlife. We're going beyond fair chase once the numbers get so high, okay? Because people aren't throwing out $750K because they want the opportunity to go hunt for a big-ass mule deer, okay? At that point, and what the system's evolved to, people are paying for a specific animal. And that just is not right. The Louisiana legislature is considering a bill backed by the Department of Wildlife and Fisheries that would institute a black bear hunting lottery in the state. The federal government removed black bears from the endangered species list in 2016. Bears are now considered recovered in Louisiana, and the sponsor of this legislation says they're clear to have a bear season. Of course, even in Louisiana, known to many as the sportsman's paradise, not everyone thinks a bear hunting season is a good idea. While the population has grown from around 100 individuals in the late 1980s to its current population of about 1,500 bears, some say the species is too fragile to lose even a single animal to hunting. They say the Louisiana black bear population is too isolated from other subspecies, and they need all the genetic diversity they can get. It's worth noting that right now, the Department of Wildlife and Fisheries is only recommending that 10 bear tags be issued in December in the northeast portion of the state. In addition, mother bears with cubs would not be permitted to be taken under the agency's rules. This new bill, HB 684, gives the department and the Wildlife Commission the ability to make all of those decisions. It simply sets the entry fee at $50 and requires the setting of some sort of black bear season. Thanks to listener Chris Barnett for calling our attention to that bill. Moving on to some legislative updates. Up in Idaho, the legislature passed and the governor signed a bill that closes a loophole in the state's open records law. Previously, state biologists had been forced to reveal animal location data to hunters who submitted a public records request for that information. This appears to have been mostly used by hunters who drew difficult-to-get tags like those for bighorn sheep. This bill closed that loophole, so now biologists can deny open records requests for that GPS location data. Seems like a no-brainer to me. I'm so glad this passed so quickly. Puts a little more faith in humanity. I also have good news out of Iowa. Several of you sent me a bill that would prohibit the state from purchasing new public land at auction or from a nonprofit that bought the land at auction, which is how a lot of these transactions happen. In a state with so little public land as is, you all wondered why the state would consider making it even more difficult for the Iowa Department of Natural Resources to expand public parcels and public access and public opportunity. The bill had passed the state Senate, but it needed support from a full House committee to remain viable. According to the Iowa Capitol Dispatch, I'm pleased to report that Representative Jane Bloomingdale, who chairs the State Government Committee, declined to call a vote for a bill, which effectively kills it for this year. I have no doubt that the calls and emails from Iowa hunters and anglers played a part in her decision. If you did that, congratulations, good job. It would be a fantastic follow-up move to write in and thank Representative Jane Bloomingdale, as well as your representatives that you wrote into as well. Good job. Slaps on the back. Kentucky is a different story. There, the state Senate voted 20-16 to advance a bill that would move the Kentucky Department of Fish and Wildlife Resources from the Tourism Cabinet and attach it to the Kentucky Department of Agriculture. It would also give the Agriculture Commission, rather than the governor, the power to appoint members of the Kentucky Fish and Wildlife Commission. Sportsmen and conservation groups have come out in strong opposition to the bill. They argue that agriculture interests often conflict with the wildlife and recreation interests, and such a massive change in wildlife management is unnecessary and politically motivated. If you want a full rundown of this issue, check out episode 255, which is an interview we did with retired Colonel Mike Abel of Kentucky BHA. There are a ton of good reasons to oppose this bill, and you should let your Kentucky House of Representatives know how you feel. And if you don't know how to get in touch with those folks, we'll publish all that info over at themeateater.com/Cal. Moving on to, I gotta be honest, in a bizarre way to me, the most requested article to be covered in a long time. The Frankensheep desk, which is also the Montana desk. A Montana man pled guilty last week to violating the Lacey Act after he cloned a giant sheep from Kyrgyzstan and sold its offspring to hunting ranches. Quite a few of you sent me this story, proving once again that you know me too well. The U.S. Justice Department announced last week that 80-year-old Jack Schubarth had accepted the plea agreement after admitting to importing parts of a Marco Polo Argali sheep without a declaration. Marco Polo sheep are a giant subspecies of Argali sheep that live in the mountainous regions of Central Asia. And when I say giant, I mean it. Marco Polo have the longest horns of all sheep, with the longest individual horn ever recorded measuring 74 inches and weighing 60 pounds. Most rams harvested by hunters have horns in the 44 to 52 inch range, and there are several outfitters who can take you out for the low price of about $40,000. Trust me when I say that's like showing up, and there's a lot of other fees on top of that. You're not walking out of Kyrgyzstan with a Marco Polo for $40K. The sheep are very impressive. You can definitely see why old Jack thought it might be a good idea to get some of those into the U.S. Unfortunately for him, doing so is very, very illegal. According to the DOJ, he imported parts of a Marco Polo sheep and sent them to an unnamed lab. That lab sent him cloned embryos, and he implanted those embryos in other sheep on his farm. One of those embryos turned out to be viable, and the resulting offspring was a purebred Marco Polo sheep born right here in the U.S. He named it Montana Mountain King, and he got to work breeding the Mountain King with other subspecies of sheep. Those offspring he sold to various hunting ranches, including one ranch in Texas that bought 11 of Mountain King's kids for $13,200. To move the prohibited sheep into and out of Montana, Schubarth and others forged veterinary inspection certificates, falsely claiming that the sheep were legally permitted species. On occasion, Schubarth sold Mountain King semen directly to sheep breeders in other states. Schubarth is now facing 2 felony wildlife crimes, a conspiracy to violate the Lacey Act, and substantively violating the Lacey Act. For each felony count, Schubarth faces a maximum penalty of 5 years in prison, a fine of up to $250,000, and 3 years of supervised release. So I just got to tell you, this is a goofy deal, right? Like, there's a demand for this stuff to hunt in high-fenced ranches. You can see the lengths that people go to provide unique behind-fence hunting opportunities. Do I think this guy should be fined $500,000 and go to prison for 10 years? No, he should definitely get fined. I think going as far as to, eradicate these animals that carry these genes and make sure that they don't end up on the other side of a high fence, like the public side, that'd probably be real good. The greater impact here is, like I said, this is a wildly popular topic. It has popped up all over national and international news. And the thing that they like talking about the most is people paying a bunch of money to shoot a cloned animal, a lab-grown animal, behind a high fence for money. And they call that hunting. They love calling it hunting. So this is a PR nightmare, man. Like, why? I don't get it. Anyway, that's all I got for you this week. We got so much going on that we are dropping extra episodes. I'd love to hear from you as to how you are enjoying those extra drops, or if you're not. More importantly, if you can only write one email this week, make it to your representative, make it to your game commission. That's how we keep this whole darn thing rolling along. Write in ASKCAL, that's AskCal at themeateater.com. Let me know what's going on in your neck of the woods. You know I appreciate you. Thanks so much. And big thanks to Jordan Sillers, who just does not get enough credit. He's writing and researching his butt off. Soon to be another, he's a dad multiple times over, but he's soon to be another dad, father here pretty quick too. So he's got all sorts of stuff happening, working his tail off. Make sure you let him know that you appreciate him. He's writing a bunch of articles there on themeateater.com and co-producing this podcast with Phil, the wild man Taylor. So thanks again, and I'll talk to you next week.
I'm sure a lot of you guys remember the old ceremonial hunting tradition of eating the heart out of the first animal you kill. Meat from those organs are among the most nutrient-rich foods on the planet. You can get those same benefits your ancestors craved via convenient daily capsules from Heart and Soil. Find out more at heartandsoil.co. And remember, use code MeatEater for 10% off your purchase.
Outdoor adventure won't wait for engine problems. Things like hard starts, rough performance, and lost fuel economy are often caused by fuel gum and varnish buildup. Seafoam can help your engine run better and last longer. Simply pour a can in your gas tank. Hunters and anglers rely on Seafoam to keep their engines running the way it should the entire season. Pick up a can of Seafoam today at your local auto parts store or visit seafoamworks.com to learn more. That's seafoamworks.com to learn more.